You like that new desire that is born within you?
Yes.
And even when the new desire is born and it has not yet manifest, you are still okay with that? Say yes. If you understand nothing more than what we've just said, you would hold all of the keys to the fulfillment of this creative endeavor that you've embarked upon. In other words, if you understand nothing more than that the contrast will continually give birth to desire within you, and even though it has not yet manifested, you are satisfied with where you are while you are eagerly anticipating your inevitable expansion, then everything about your vibration would be perfect for the perfect eternal expansion that, as we said just now, is inevitable. In fact, the thing that stands as the most common hindrance is that feeling of dissatisfaction about something that I now want that I do not have. Either there is something that I've got that I don't want and I'm unhappy that I can't get rid of it, or there is something that I desire that has not yet come fully to me and I am irritated or depressed that it has not yet come. That feeling of discord about dissatisfaction of unfulfilled desires is the biggest hindrance, and also the simplest one to release once you understand how it all works. You came forth intending that contrast would give birth to new desire. Because you are leading-edge creators, you knew that you would come forth into an environment where you could not help but continually conclude new desires. And you also knew that when the new desire was born within you, that you would not be vibrationally up to speed with every new desire in the moment that you give birth to them. You know that from your non-physical perspective, you certainly know it, and many of you are coming to know it from your physical perspective, that every time you or anyone, no matter what level of consciousness it is, whether it's you, the fully functioning creative genius human, or whether it is a cell in someone or even a plant's body, that when any point of consciousness asks for anything, and it does it constantly, you cannot help but do it by your comparative nature. When you ask, it is always given. Always, always, always given every single time. So we would like to help you to understand the creative process in 3 simple points. And 2 of them are already taken care of without your conscious awareness. The 3rd one is what we will talk about primarily here today, for it certainly is where your work is. The first point in creation is desire or asking. That happens just by your association with your experience. So the asking happens. The second point is the answering to that asking. Universal forces, some call it God force, we call it creative life force. The answer is always given in the moment of the asking. So 1, ask, 2, the answer is given. And the 3rd point is you, who is asking, must then receive. You must be in the place where you allow the thing that you're asking for. So if there's something that you have been wanting that is not yet manifesting in your experience, it isn't because of 1 or 2, it isn't because you haven't asked, and it isn't because the universe has not yielded it. It can only be that you are not in the receiving mode. You may have seen the monster bus that Jerry and Esther are moving about in out in the parking lot. And on top of it is a satellite dish. So when they come into a campground, Esther will say to Jerry, "Where is Houston?" She wants to know because somewhere over Houston is the satellite that is going to beam to their dish. And Jerry will say, "Oh, it's off that way," or "It's off that way." And Esther will look to see if there's a tree between her dish and what she thinks the satellite position is. And if it looks clear, she will say, "I think we can get a clear shot at this." And so she gets out a little chart that tells her what the elevation should be set at, depending upon where they are on the planet in relationship to this satellite dish. And then she pushes some buttons which sets the elevation on the dish. And then the little dish just begins to turn around and around on the top of the motorhome until it locks on to the signal. If they do not have the elevation set properly, that little dish just turns around and around and around. It would work its heart out. It would spin all night long. Every now and again it does. But if it is not in the proper receiving mode, they do not have the satisfying results that they are looking for. Sometimes we see you that way. You are willing to put forth endless effort. You'll work 24 hours a day. There is no end to the work or struggle that you are willing to put forth in order to try to achieve. But if you are not in the proper vibrational mode, no matter how much energy or effort or time or money you put into your endeavor, you don't lock on. So we've been calling this gathering for some time the Science of Deliberate Creation. We think it's a lovely name. It talks about deliberately choosing thought. Now we're calling it the art of locking on, the art of allowing, the art of receiving. It is receiving that is your work. When you think about it, when someone says to you, "Oh, you are a wondrous being," or "Oh, you look lovely today," how's your receiving mode? In other words, does it bounce right off of you in a sort of embarrassing feeling? Or do you absorb it like a thirsty sponge? Do you receive the well-being that is being offered to you? Or are you holding yourself in some sort of tension without even knowing you're doing it? That's really what we want to talk about here today. We want to talk about how you're asking and have been for longer than there are words to express time. And the source energy, the responsive, always answering source energy, has been coming forth in response to yours and other desires. There is only a source of well-being. Only well-being flows. You may be letting in the fullness of that well-being, or you may be pinching it off a bit. And depending upon how you're doing with that, you are living your life experience. The way you feel is your literal indicator of whether you're letting what in? Letting in well-being, letting in who you are, letting in the clarity that is really you, letting in the abundance that is natural to you, letting in your well-being and your resilience, your physical stamina, letting in your flexibility, letting in your ability to intuitively know where your path is, letting in your sensitivity to your surroundings, letting in your opportunities to expand, letting in your joy and appreciation, letting in the fullness of who you are, letting yourself be who you really are. That's what this gathering is really about, because we don't need to teach you about what to want. That part comes naturally to you. It's not anybody's business what you want anyway. You are freedom-based beings who get to choose. We don't need to tell you about who you are from non-physical. You innately know who you are. You are source energy expressing in this physical body. You're not here to prove some kind of worthiness. You're not here to fix something that is broken. You are here as expanding beings to assist with the expansion, not because it needs your assistance, but because it is fun, it is fulfilling, it is inevitable for the universe to expand. And in this inevitable expanding universe, you, genius creators, said, I will go forth into this contrasting experience where all kinds of choices will be laid before me. And out of this assembly line of opportunities, I will conclude, sometimes unconsciously, sometimes fully consciously, new desires, in some cases desires that have never been unto this universe or any other ever before. And when that new rocket of desire is born within me, really my work is done, because when that rocket is born, the asking is in place. And when the asking is in place, the answering is in place. And so the expansion of the universe happens joyously, naturally, creatively, eternally. This gathering is not about that. That happens. This gathering is about assisting you in achieving vibrational harmony with your own desire, so that you can right now, this red-hot minute, express yourself in the fullest sense of the word. As with all analogies, our satellite dish analogy is not perfect. The biggest difference between it and what's happening with you is that your contrast, which causes you to give birth to your rocket of desire, sends the signal. In other words, it is your desire that is beaming to you. So when we say you're wanting to align the energy within you, we're talking about aligning the energy of your now thought, your habit of thought, your belief, your day-to-day vibrational expression, and the vibration of your desire. So you launch the rocket that is sending the signal to you. Now all you've got to do is line up with the signal that you've sent to you. In other words, it is the vibrational harmony between the vibrational meter of your desire and the vibrational meter of your now expression that matters. If you've concluded through your exposure to contrast that you desire something different in your experience, and that desire is vibrating here, it is this dream, this idea that you have that when you first thought about it thrilled you. But now you stand here mostly noticing what is, talking about it softly to your friends, wish this were different, wish this were different, wish this were different. In every moment that you're talking about what is, instead of where you're going, instead of what you are desiring, you're holding yourself vibrationally apart from the thing you want. You're not locked onto your signal. So as we're playing together today, we're going to do a lot of demonstrating of locked off, locked on, locked off, locked on. In other words, we think it would be very helpful if you would begin to catch yourself in the act of being locked off your signal, because we hear so many of you saying, what's going on here? I know I want it. I know I've been saying I want it. I know I'm using the right words. I know I've got the right expression on my face. Why isn't it happening? Why isn't it coming to me? And in answer to your question, you are the ones that hold the answer to that. The answer to that is because you keep doing that thing you do that locks you off the signal. One day, some time ago, Esther went out to the chicken coop and found a possum in the nest where the eggs are, with egg all over its face. She loved it. Egg on its face. Imagine that. Esther said, I've heard that all my life, and this is the first time I've ever experienced someone with egg on their face. And if you could have seen this little possum, the guilty look on his face, in other words, he was the epitome of being caught with egg on his face. Well, that's sort of what we want you to begin to do. We want you to catch yourself in the act of doing that thing you do when you are not allowing the pure positive energy to flow, when you're not allowing yourself to be a vibrational match to your own desire. At a seminar recently in Los Angeles, Jana had made the arrangements for a lovely room like this. And it was a piece of the ballroom, a large piece of the ballroom. And she had told the woman who was helping her at the hotel, sound is important to us. And so a few weeks before the seminar, the sales coordinator called Jana and said, there is a trade show that's going to occupy the other part of the ballroom, and they might be a little bit noisy. So we've moved you to another part of the hotel. And Jana said, that's very good. And then when Jana called the final head count in 72 hours before the event, the woman said, oh, that's too many people for the room we have you in. And Jana said, well, that's how many people are coming. What are you going to do? And the woman said, there isn't anything we can do. You will be very cozy. And so they arrived at the hotel, and it turned out that by removing tables and everyone sitting nice and close together, the room did accommodate nicely. But it was less than perfect. And as Esther was walking down the hallway at segment of refreshment, she walked past the ballroom that had been theirs. And she looked in the ballroom, and there were tables all around the edges of this big room, and 14 people in the room. Esther counted them. And then she said to Jerry, this just isn't right. And then she said, I'm doing it now, aren't I? In other words, she recognized by the aggravation she was feeling that she was in that moment not a vibrational match to what she's been saying she wants. She can talk about perfect room. She can talk about perfect sound. She can instruct Jana to make it all happen. But as she leaves the hotel and says that wasn't right, or she leaves the hotel and says, the sound was really bad in that room, what are we going to do about that? She's doing that thing she does where she does not allow herself to lock on to the signal of her own desire. She's locked on to something else, you see. So what happens to our beloved human objective perusers is that you tend to evaluate the content of your now experience so fully that you find the more familiar vibration of what is rather than the better feeling vibration of what you desire. And that right there is the only thing that ever holds you apart from anything you want. There is nothing other than that. We tease a little bit. It's like being willing to endure just a little bit of poison. It's like every day finding a little poison and just touch it. It's a little bitter at first, just a little bit. Doesn't kill you right away.